Donald Trump has been elected not too long ago, second time around. Seems to be even a bit more erratic than the first time. How are all these different tariffs going to affect our trade relationship with China, with the US, renewables as a whole? Because, I mean, China certainly bought themselves out a big niche to be a huge influencer in this. They were very smart there. They're eating the Germans alive on the cars now. How's Trump affecting us?
Time will tell. It's interesting to see where he kind of goes to next with his, executive orders and his slashing of this, that, and the other, and adding on tariffs. I think there's going to be quite a transition in terms of global trade. I wonder if there's going to be quite a backlash in America in terms of, due to there'll be, I think, a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, I mean, all those tariffs making things more expensive.
Yeah, they're going to hurt the domestic market. So, and restrict supply and all the rest of it. Because a lot of countries are just going, well, sod you, we just won't sell American products anymore.
So you think it could backfire?
Yeah, I wonder if I kind of question if it's going to backfire. And it's interesting, when he was in his last term, again with all his anti-renewables policy, the renewables industry in America actually went through its largest growth period, which is quite ironic in a way. And I almost wonder if that's going to happen again this time around, because some of the policies, like dig baby dig and all this kind of stuff, or drill baby drill, whatever it was. It's not. It doesn't take a genius to work out that energy from renewables is still cheaper than coal, and EVs are more. They've got more advantages financially from a driving perspective, from a fueling perspective, than combustion engine cars. And just again, people tend to vote with their wallets or act with their wallet. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to pan out. It's a very, very interesting and kind of scary space at the same time. For us domestically, I think the government here are kind of doing desperate talks to try to see, where we're going to sit, if it's going to start, because I think there's looking at slapping on tariffs to Australia as well. So we'll see. I'm not quite sure how dependent we are on the American market, or vice versa, how much we trade with them.
I think the issue is going to be, if Trump puts a lot of tariffs on China, then China economy slows down, then their need for Australian products will be less, and therefore we're kind of shot by friendly fire kind of indirectly. That's what possibly Trump's stuff's going to be causing. Do you share that could happen?
Anything's possible, and it depends how domestically by China it gets interpreted, and then what gaps they need to fill in terms of trade and revenue they need to fill, and where they either absorb it or pass that on by increasing tariffs to other regions, and or where any actual product deficit goes. And Australia's always been a bit of a dumping ground for product, cars, renewables, all sorts of stuff, especially Chinese product. It kind of gets dumped here, So it could be that we actually see an influx of cheaper Chinese products that is being subsidised because they need to find homes for it to keep the Chinese economy buoyant. It just almost, you could all potentially argue that we could benefit in a way by the trade war between America and China. Just don't know. It's still too early days, but it's very concerning what that's going to do for, the global trade and global politics as well.
Now, America, we always were taught, they were the leader of the free world and democracy and freedom of choice and all that. And now Trump's going, Greenland, I want that. Panama Canal, that's one of mine. What about, we might want Antarctica on our part one day. And Gaza, that solution, it's not really what we were learned and taught in school of how democracy should work.
No.
Should we maybe distance ourselves from America when they go really mad?
I think it really isn't. When you look at those kind of
You seem to
policies,
think a lot. Is it a political question that you're really worried about answering, or what?
I suppose, I think that it's,
I mean, why aren't we moving into a more neutral position and say, listen, there's Brazil, there is Turkey, there is India, there is China, there is Vietnam. They're all kind of forming a group together. They don't need America really. I mean, America's isolating themselves. The rest of the world gets on with it. Europe's not really their biggest mate anymore, and they rely on each other.
well, this is why I kind of hesitate, because is it real? Is it real policy? Is it actually going to do anything? Is it going to actually be realised, or is it just rhetoric? Is it just talk at the moment? You know, really, he's not going to buy Greenland. They turned him to shove it. You know, it's like, it just looks like it's a lot of hot air to be seen to get media attention, to be seen as this great big powerful being and entity and nation. It's almost a distraction.
So you're not taking him serious, do you?
Not really. What are you going to do with your domestic policy? You know, how are you actually going to address some of the fundamental issues in America first? You know,
what's that? High drug use, low manufacturing,
high crime rate. You know, the amount of mass shootings. You know, the issues with the healthcare system. There's a lot of real issues in America, which are very difficult to address within the term. So instead, I'm going to deal with the world problems.
So what? You're saying basically there's a very rusted roof and I put a solar system on top to hide the holes and make a big fanfare about it, but I haven't really fixed the underlying problems. So if I talk about all the big stuff from overseas, my domestic stuff I probably realise I can't fix.
Kind of. I do wonder that. I do wonder. Because also, you know, you look at the amount of debt that America's got, you know, it's insane.
Mainly to China.
Yeah.
So if China one day says, oh, well, we sell all those debts for a couple of pennies, and I mean, they got actually leverage, haven't they?
Yeah. It's like 30 odd trillion. It's like insane. Like, it's not even monopoly money. It's like a shop full of monopoly board money. You know,
but I mean, the dollar's just gone up, the US dollar, it's gone more value, despite all the fundamentals for the US being wrong.
Yeah, but is that because of the federal policy or the government policy, or is that just because of a short-term initial sort of response by the markets to do things now before shit happens down the road? You know, just because there's a blip doesn't mean that's a sustained profile. It could just go whoop, woof.
Right.
You know, so it'd be interesting to know. So at the moment, I'm kind of looking at it and just go, and also I look at a lot of the media and go, how much of this is actually true? Because are these things actually really happening? Is this just content? Is this just...
But we never had a politician like that. I mean, if somebody in Australia goes up and says, we're going to sell Tasmania now, nobody's going to say, oh, well, that's just rhetoric to get a headline. People think, well, that's the guy's gone crazy and that's what he wants to do. So why do we let somebody like Trump, who's got a trigger on the nuclear button, talk stuff like that?
How can we not? When you say how do you not let it happen? That's the problem.
You mean,
when he's got his own media channel, when it's all so controlled by other very wealthy people with financial interests and also a huge amount of media presence, to stop that rhetoric. You know, the whole thing has been built on rhetoric and these narratives of I'm going to do this and going to do that. It's never, okay, fact check it. How are you going to do this? You know, is actually what you're saying true? You know, is anything true with what's going on here? Or is it all just hyperbole and talk? You know, how much we're hearing now is true. You just don't know, because it's just no one that challenges it gets as much airtime as what comes out of that camp, because it's way more interesting and outrageous and distressing than the truth.
But eventually they're going to run out of craziness.
Oh, there's plenty of craziness to keep going in the world. There's plenty. There's, you know, you could you could keep that going for the next 3-4 years easily, you know.
But I'm actually going to wonder if he's going to last the distance, health-wise and mental-wise.
You could end up in this situation where, which has happened before, you know, all over the world, where the leaders are no longer competent, but you just don't see them. But this stuff keeps happening because there's a machine behind it churning out the rules and the requirements, and you know, it still happens anyway. And again, when you've got this group of individuals supporting, these business individuals supporting the government that can really pull the strings and make things happen, you know, how much is coming from Trump and how much is he just representing the interests of other parties?
So it's a bit like a Weekend at Bernie's, is it?
Something on it.
Ah,
Could be.
all right, okay.